Hi, my name is Andy Scarborough and I'm here with CrownWorks. I am here because I really want to change the way that we're having conversations behind our chair, the way we're interacting with our guests, and overall the longevity of a hairdresser's career. I think that there are a few things that could be really impactful practices that we just didn't learn in beauty school about some psychology principles, some energetic work, and also a little something called compassion fatigue. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about those things today. After 15 years of hairdressing, what I've really found is that the salon is in fact a sacred space. Like, more clients come to me more often than they go to church. And I mean no sacrilege by that, but this is a really special time. And the truth is, in beauty school, they don't talk about what is going to come up in that chair. And that's part of what really moved me to be here now, having CrownWorks, making a space for these kind of conversations. For about 10 years now, I've been in professional education for hairdressers. So you might say platform artistry or in salon education, but basically I get to come in and hang out with some of the coolest stylists that I know, geeking out in full, like, unfiltered nerd fashion about all kinds of hair cutting or coloring or upstyling techniques. And interestingly enough, the thing that keeps coming forward the most is not necessarily about the technical skill, but about the people that it's attached to. Because, you know, nobody really tells us that in beauty school. Nobody really says, hey, by the way, there's going to be like an actual human having actual human experiences right underneath your hands while you're trying to like foil and keep up with the Kardashians. So a few years ago, they talked about deregulating hairdresser licensing. I mean, like dismantling the State Board of Cosmetology. And it wasn't because, Lord knows, we didn't need help on sanitation. Bless all of my combs in their little quartz jar. But it was really about the income level of a hairstylist. When I started beauty school, like 15 years ago, they gave us a statistic. Basically, look around. Only about a quarter of the people that are enrolled in your class right now, inside 2 years after graduating, will actually be working in this profession. And that was terrifying for me. I grew up in Texas in a house with 6 girls, and I think that I was probably bottle fed on Aquanet. So this was a chosen profession for me, and I was really offended by the insinuation that so many people wouldn't take it seriously. What I realized, though, as I was going through school and then my first couple of years in various apprenticeships and then finally on the styling floor myself, that it was really just a lack of preparedness for what this was going to look like. You know, I remember our instructors forbidding us to sit down, and I thought, man, what a bunch of thugs, like, right, they're trying to condition our bodies for being upright for, you know, 8 or 10 hours a day. And truly it is a really physically demanding job, and I think that that's why some people don't make it. It's certainly why the average career span of a working hairdresser is about 10 years. But there's a lot of other things that they don't prepare us for as well. And a great deal of that is the level of emotional exhaustion and frankly, spiritual exhaustion. In the medical and veterinary profession, there's a term for it. They call it compassion fatigue. So compassion fatigue is a real thing. And where you see it a lot, they treat it quite a bit in like NICU nurses or animal shelters where animals have to be euthanized. There's a certain numbness that comes over those people when they're faced with that kind of situation over and over again, that they just become desensitized to it. And it took me probably 4 or 5 years in my career before I realized that that was happening to me too. I worked next to this girl who was the most technically sound stylist I have ever known in my life. I mean, she just saw the world in like geometric shapes and angles. Hated people, like just didn't like the people attached to it. And I feel like that level of kind of disassociation was a coping mechanism that she came up with. For me, the way that it showed up for me was I got really codependent with them. I got really emotionally wrapped up in my clients' lives, and I had a really hard time charging what I needed to survive. And to trace back around to that conversation about the delicensing of cosmetology, that's what it was about. It was about the inability for cosmetologists to pay back their student loans. That's crazy. This is relatively not a lot of money. And the fact that they were looking at delicensing our industry because stylists couldn't pay that money back means that they weren't profitable enough behind their chair, meaning there was a piece of our education that was missing. And that's really what prompted me to look into this work myself. About 8 years ago, I met a client who had attended a program in spiritual psychology. She was a life coach, right? I mean, listen, I live in LA. Like, if you're a rock, you hit like a healer and like 10 life coaches. And like it skips along 5 or 6 therapists, a few fitness coaches. Like I live in one of the most wellness focused cities in the world. I'm still about 20 pounds overweight and really enjoy green juice while I'm smoking a cigarette sometimes, but that's the humanity of it. This woman changed my career. Inside the first year that I knew her, she had referred me probably a dozen clients, and they were all incredible. And I found the conversation that I was having behind my chair shifting in a really meaningful way. They were able to share their life and their human experiences with me in a way that made me feel empowered in my own experiences, and made me recognize that they didn't need my help, and a discounted haircut wasn't going to fix them, but someone to really be present and focused with them would help the most. Little by little, my clientele transformed. And what I noticed is around me, the conversation started to shift too. I had 2 girls that worked on either side of me at that point. And I remember looking up one day and realizing I couldn't remember the last time anybody had talked about one of the Kardashians or anybody in Us Weekly. And sure, you know, like we like the trashy magazines as a hair salon, right? Like that's required reading. This is the sacred space to read those magazines in. But by and far, people were having really honest, connected conversations. And from those connected conversations, what I realized is that my client retention was going up and my average ticket sale was going up. And by and far, the only thing that I was doing was being more present and offering a lot less judgment of them and a lot less judgment of myself. So I learned the difference between being a service provider and really being of service. So when I first learned that compassion fatigue was actually like a thing and was what I was dealing with, it became really clear for me about some of the coping mechanisms that I had really slowly and really subtly built up over the years to figure out how to be on for people or how to turn myself off at the end of the night. I remember seeing this woman at a dinner party or something, and she was a shaman. She said to me, "Oh, you have so many cords attached to you, like all of these cords are attached to you." And I didn't really know what she meant, but she said, "How do you separate the connection with your clients after they leave?" And I realized I hadn't so much as done anything but swipe their credit card. Like maybe that's the separation. When the truth is that, you know, on a really basic, like energetic level, even the way we stand behind the chair is physically plugging into somebody. And listen, guys, I'm not trying to be woo-woo and talk about energy like it's fairy dust. I'm like, we can talk about fairy dust. I love me some fairy dust, but on a like we are made of electricity sort of conversational level, there are places in our body that hold different kinds of connection. And what I found is just the positioning of the way we work. We are, when we're standing behind a client, I mean, think about it, right? Like their head is right next to our heart and our solar plexus. And we've got our hands all up in their crown chakra. So there's an element of plugging into people. I mean, listen, you know, like a client leaves the salon and you still feel them there, right? Like you're checking the bathroom before you go to talk about like how horrible they were because you just still feel them in the salon. And it's that kind of lingering connectivity that I want to talk about a little bit now. So there's lots of rules in hairdressing about sanitation, but I think that there's a conversation that could be had about spiritual sanitation. And there are a few things that can help with that. So I'd love to share with you some of my favorite tools that I use to keep the salon super high vibe and the energy in my chair super tidy. Now, the first will be to talk about some crystals. And I get it, like you don't have to have a shrine on your station, but a few pieces kind of placed strategically throughout can really have a big impact on the space. The first one that I want to talk about is smoky quartz. And this piece is a beast. So this is a very dark piece of smoky quartz. It's awesome. It comes in all different kinds of colors, shapes, and sizes. They range in color from like a really almost dusty clear to this like dark chocolate little beauty that I just love. Smoky quartz is about the transmutation, right? The shifting over, the transforming, which is kind of fitting because it's what we do, of that negative or dense energy into light. So the stone itself absorbs, magnetizes it to it, all the heavy, dense vibes, and then transforms them and puts them back out as squeaky clean light. The second one that I want to discuss is amethyst, and this is another beast. This amethyst point is enormous and super powerful. These are pieces that I'm sharing with you from my home meditation area. The pieces that I have on the salon station are a little bit more, you know, demure, low-key, depending on how you roll in your shop. Like put the beast up there, say hey. Amethyst is great because it really increases intuitive abilities. It also helps to minimize addictive behaviors. It's interesting because I know like myself and so many other hairdressers, we have terrible eating habits. And so this helps to reduce cravings of like junk food and that kind of thing. It's also really great for neutralizing some of the EMF, the technological frequency stuff that's happening. And we got all kinds of like blow dryers and cell phones and computers and stuff around the shop. So it helps to neutralize that as well. And the last piece, and I wish that I had a bigger one, but this is my favorite piece of rose quartz. And rose quartz is so sweet. It's just, if you've never worked with stones before, rose quartz is one you can't do wrong. It's about love, like it's a love stone, and more importantly, it's a self-love stone. It's associated with the heart. And I find that there's such a vulnerability when people sit down in the chair that immediately they start talking about all of the stuff they hate about themselves. And I'm like, here, why don't you like hold a piece of rose quartz for a minute? I'm gonna go get you some water. Rose quartz carries such a sweetness and a loving warmth that it's a really fitting piece to have in the hair salon. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is clearing the space, because sometimes like you got those clients that you want to like go home and take a bath after you see. And that's not always an option. So there are a few tools that have been used for a long time to clear negative energy. And the first that I want to talk about is sage. So just like wine, there are grades of things and qualities. But I do believe that the intention behind it is great. So if you pick your sage up at Urban Outfitters, great. You want to hike up to Ojai and pick it or grow it yourself, awesome, even better. But one little bundle of sage looks like this. right? Now you can burn it with the strings attached, or you can take it off and burn one leaf at a time, whatever you like. It will smoke a lot. That's the point. One of the reasons people started to use sage in the first place is that it has antimicrobial properties. So not all smoke and mirrors, it's actually like a real thing. It's also a really beautiful ceremony and practice just to end your day. Maybe before you start to pour that glass of wine, maybe while the wine is aerating on the counter, just go into a room where you have a nice moment to yourself, open a window, so you don't set off the smoke alarms, and also so that you can direct the bad vibes or energetic garbage to leave through the open window and doesn't wind up banging around in your house. And then just really simple, start it. You just need a little bit, just a little smoke will do. You don't need to like engulf the whole thing. And then start at your head, work your way down, all the way down to your feet. And then if you're a stylist, be sure you get your hands as well, because again, this is where we've been touching those clients all day long. And then simply ask that anything that is not for your greatest and highest good be removed from your body, from your energetic body, leave through the window, go back into the nothingness from whence it came, and that everything be returned back to you and to the earth in light. An alternative to the sage is Palo Santo. It comes in little sticks like this. It smells amazing. The oil from it is actually what burns, and you can get it in pure essential oil form as well. And this smudge is just like sage, slightly less smoky. It's also slightly less sagey. This is what I burn in the salon. If either of those isn't an option, maybe you're afraid it's gonna look weird in the shop. Maybe your clients are gonna freak out and think somebody's hair is burning. All valid concerns. One of my favorite things to use is a Palo Santo oil spray, and this is awesome. So as a client leaves, I do two things. First, in my goodbye, I make a point to wave and then move my hand through that chest and solar plexus area just to kind of like clear out and cut those cords, right? And I'll say to myself, we're closing that session, right? Like I'm done working with that person. I call back all of my energy. I send them in light, but making that a conscious thought is really important. And then the next thing that I do is just take a little bit of a Palo Santo spray, one little spritz over the chair, wipe down the chair. You got to be wiping down your chair anyway. So wipe down your chair, and then it's a whole fresh experience, and you'll be amazed at how clear you feel and how much more quickly you're able to sink down and connect into that next client. It's a really fresh connection for both you and your next client. Washing your hands is not only state board rules and regulations, but it's also a really great way to just do a final reset between clients. So cool water on your wrist will kind of lower your heart rate if you've had a particularly challenging client before. And water is a universal solvent, right? In so many practices, we do ritual baths or showers or things like that, baptism. And so really think about that. And again, it's really about the conscious intention of it, right? As I'm washing my hands between clients, I'm asking that any kind of energetic residue from the previous client be removed, and that I have the ability to start fresh with clean, empowered, charged hands for my next guest. So thanks for joining me at CrownWorks. Till next time, crown on. Follow CrownWorks on Instagram at @crown_works.